There will be 4 presentations in our discussion today. We have deliberately used the word enclosed space deaths because we don't want to hide from the fact that we're talking about a very serious issue here. Enclosed spaces are one of the biggest killers of seafarers. The IMO Vision and Goals document, which was produced many years ago in IMO, talks about the human element, and one of the most important things being to ask the seafarer what they think about safety and various things like that. And our good friend Kuba Zamansky, who's going to be talking in a couple of minutes, and InterManager, have asked the opinion of somewhere in the region of 5,000 seafarers of what they think of the issue of enclosed space death. And the purpose of this presentation is to explore some of the issues that they've raised and to ask some questions. We don't expect to be able to find all the answers to these problems in the next hour or so. We expect to find some questions which hopefully ourselves and other organisations who are working on enclosed space safety can take into the future. The interesting point, going back to the seafarer, is the IMO Visions and Goals talks about the human element as being a very complex subject, and says that the solution to the very complex subject of the human element is to involve a large number of different people. And in this particular subject area, the seafarer is at the front line, but there are many people that are involved in finding a solution to this, which include regulators, it can include shipbuilders, equipment manufacturers, ship owners, ship managers, and a variety of different people. And it's only if we can get all of those people, and charterers above all else, only if we can get all of those various people to collaborate can we actually find an answer that will reduce deaths. Once more, questions we'll take at the very end. The speakers, first of all, Kuba Zamansky, who's the Secretary General of InterManager. We have Andy Teasdale, who's a member of IMarEST Human Element Working Group. We have Maria Kabura, who's a Senior Technical Advisor at IMarEST. And we have myself, who chairs the IMarEST Human Element Working Group. And I also had a colleague of mine, Shamsul Huda, who's given me some help in preparing this presentation. After my presentation, we'll go straight into the questions. Kuba, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everybody. My name is unpronounceable. I'm Polish, Kuba Szymański, as you can tell from the ending of my name. InterManager, enclosed space deaths. As Martin mentioned, I think not many people actually realize that we are talking about a lot of seafarers, and we never ask them a question. Why are you guys dying? What is happening there? You will see presentations today, and I'm no doubt you read a lot of articles, then there's a lot of human error, that people are not trained enough, then we need to do more training, and so on and so forth. As a seafarer, I don't think I need more training on that one, to be perfectly honest. I would rather have other people trained not to send me to some places. And here we go. This is what our nearly 5,000 indeed seafarers over the last 8 months. We finished our survey actually 1st of January 2019, and it took us a long time to collect everything because we were overwhelmed. So seafarers, if you are watching us today, thank you so much for coming back to us. Without you, we would not be able to speak on your behalf today. Here we go, that's me. I'm Secretary General of InterManager. InterManager is the Association of Ship Managers. This is third-party ship managers, but also ship owners who are managing ships themselves. And that's our website. Now, context. What's the definition of the enclosed space? So you don't have to rack your brains. Code of Safe Working Practices, Chapter 17, tells you precisely what it is. I'm not going to read it to you, but it's there. And interestingly enough, a lot of ship managers, those who are holders of document of compliance, responsible people for seafarers, interpret it differently. There is a lot of guidelines and there is a lot of guidance available. How interesting it is that a lot of organizations interpret it differently, and they have it actually approved by flag states and class societies, saying, yes, your understanding of enclosed space is fine. Keep going, kill people, that's okay. Is there a problem? Well, difficult to say. Anecdotally, we know there is a problem because we read it in the newspapers, we read it in the websites. Facebook, social media is full of it. But where is IMO then? Why we don't have one place where we can all go and have a look, see the trends? So what we have is the Marine Accident Investigation International Forum. They have done proper statistics. Are they full statistics? Well, they are the best we can have. MIBE, Marine Accident Investigation Board, created some statistics, but as you can see, they are also fragmented. And then we've got International Bulk Terminal Association, not necessarily shipping, but obviously they do take bulk carriers, and they are very concerned that over the years from 1999 to 2018, there were 106 fatalities. And then you can see the split, 70 seafarers and 36 shore workers. So why we are not concerned? Why we are not doing something about it? Where are those statistics? Why P&I clubs, those who are actually paying for the accidents, are not coming forward and are not talking to each other? Obviously, I am very well aware that there are some P&I clubs watching us today, and they would say, no way, Kuba, yes, we do have statistics. Well done, guys. Share them. Show them. Talk to each other. You've got international group. Time to actually start talking about those things. Because otherwise, if we don't know whether we are doing something right or wrong, we will never improve on that. Further, we will not investigate accidents properly. We will always say, oh, this stupid chief engineer. Oh, that silly chief officer. How could they do that? Precisely. How could our senior people go somewhere and kill themselves? They have been trained by yourself, they have been promoted by yourselves, they have been around in the industry, and they still go and die. I can't get it, guys. Honestly, I can't get it. That's why I'm so passionate to come up with further development, going further than just training of seafarers and seeing what's happening. So when we ask our own seafarers, why? What's happening? A lot of them said, we've got a problem, Houston. The problem is procedures. Procedures which are written down in our SMS, shipboard management systems. They are conflicting. They are written in a language we don't understand. They are written with verbal diarrhea. There's thousands of words, and actually we don't know what to read. And when an accident happens, nobody really goes back to the procedures and sees why this superbly written SMS allowed people to die. The other thing, and as you can see, 3 of those items are together. Design, and I will actually have 2 slides on design as well. Design, we in shipping love creating an environment for failure. We are making life of our seafarers is really difficult. I'm sorry, there is an accident around Westminster today, I suppose. Here we go. Design of enclosed spaces. I wish some of the naval architects were actually going into those spaces themselves. With all the equipment I will list, so you can actually go, guys, and rescue me. 120 kilogram captain who is unconscious in ballast tank number 7, bay number 11. Good luck taking me out of there. What else we have? Personnel. And that's extremely important, and I want to translate this statistics for you. What our people are saying is that because shipping industry now, in maybe even 90%, employs the model of hire and fire, a lot of seafarers do not work with themselves. They don't know each other. They struggle to get a job. Once they got a job, they cherish this job. They don't want to put their head above the parapet. They will not do take 5 because they are afraid. This is their first contract. They don't know this team. They never worked in this company. They are delighted that they can work here. They are not going to go against the procedure. If the procedure says that there is 2 guys going down into the tank with only 1 oxygen meter, no gas detection system, and this has been done in this company before, there is a very little likelihood that they would say, no, sorry, I'm not doing it. And training. and it's not a training for seafarers necessarily, it's the training of people who are sending, who are demanding seafarers to go to the enclosed spaces. If you think about it now, I'm talking to you guys in the office. When did you actually get a training on enclosed spaces? Have you ever been to enclosed space? Do you know what it means when you are sending, please prepare all the tanks for tomorrow morning, ASCP? What does that mean? What does it entitle? Do you know what will be happening on board of the ship? When you are asking them to do 18 tanks, or maybe chemical carrier, 40 tanks, to be ready tomorrow with 6 people on board? How? So this is that kind of training we are talking about. And then obviously further and further on this particular statistics. But what seafarers are trying to say is basically help us. Start thinking with us. Stop demanding from us. Create a safe environment for us so we can safely and happily do the job. Phase 2 of our project now was to go back to the seafarers and ask them, hey guys, who do you think are the stakeholders in this process of enclosed space entries and unfortunately enclosed space deaths? We also went to our ship managers and they came up with this list. I'm pretty sure it's not exhaustive list, but look at this. Do you think, you guys watching me now, you are probably class representative, you work in a flag office, you may be an owner office. Do you see yourself as a part of a problem? If you don't, you will not be a part of a solution. And that is the paradigm shift I would like to achieve after today's event, or maybe after you read our survey, or maybe after you talk to your colleagues. Guys, you are part of it, and you have to do something about it. Class, you approve ships' designs. Shipyards, you are building, you are designing those things. Flag state, you are very happy with minimum safe manning. You are saying that it is okay to have 3 AVs on board. How come, if the team is supposed to be 2 guys going into the tank, 1 standing up and by, where is the rescue team? Who is going to be a rescue team? Have you ever thought about that when you are actually approving minimum safe manning? Mr. Owner, when you are pushing ship managers and saying, oh, I only want minimum manning people on board, how are these guys going to earn money for you safely? Cargo owner, when you are ordering ship to get clean and everything, do you think about the timing? How can we do that? Ports, hello, we need your reception facilities, for example. We need your time, we need your berth, we need your cooperation. We need your people to understand that ships might kill you. As you can see from some statistics, 30% of port people are getting killed on board of the ships. Ship manager, are you defending your people on board? Are you able to put the fees down and say, sorry, no, we need more time. Sorry, no, we need more equipment. Sorry, no, we need to do A, B, and C. Crew managers, are you employing right people? Are you making sure that these people are coming back? Are you making sure that we are not losing people with knowledge, with experience, so they can come back to the same company and same ships? And senior managers, when accident happens on board of your ship, do you feel responsible for that? And I mean really, really, do you feel responsible? Are you going back on your own procedures, checking that and saying, how come that our best ISM code allowed people to die? In my opinion, every accident is the failed risk assessment, and it should be looked at as failed risk assessment, as failed procedure. And don't go back and say, oh, those stupid seafarers, they killed themselves. They wouldn't like to do that. I tell you, there's no one in the world who wakes up 8 o'clock in the morning and says, oh, you know what, I'll kill myself today. I'll go to the enclosed space and I will not care about anything. We don't do that, guys, we don't. Now look at the design of the tank, okay? That's one of the ballast tanks. It's L-shaped for those of you. And I put that red arrow so you can see how deep. This could be 25 meters below deck. How are we measuring in every bay that there is actually enough oxygen? Dear designers, naval architects, do we have a probe in every bay? Or do you want me, 120 kilo guy, to go there, crawl over everything, just to find out, no, there is no oxygen. Run, Cuba, run! You are in a proverbial deep. How are we supposed to know that, guys, if you are not giving us a chance? Now, it has to be continuous ventilation. How can we achieve that? How can we actually continuously ventilate places like that? There's another one over here. Look at the size of that. The ship can be 46 meters wide. So we're talking 23 meters in this area. 23 meters aside and 20 meters up. Guys, this is 50 meters from the entrance. And if you look at the size of the manholes, at the top right corner there is a lady measuring oxygen. How deeply is she penetrating into the tank? It's bound to be oxygen there. There's nothing else. We want to measure further down. We want to make sure that our people will actually survive there. Now, this is not me. This is quite the yellow guy. He's quite slim. He's getting into the tank. Now, imagine he needs to wear one of those things. By the way, look at the prices. I put them there. And he needs to wear all of that. So this guy is supposed to go into this tank wearing all of this, which is gas detection equipment, helmet mounted light preferably. Very often we don't have it. We are provided with a torch which we sling across our chests. Hands-free communication equipment because we need to talk to people. There should be a tripod system. We should really have oxygen resuscitation equipment available for us. That one which will automatically deliver oxygen to someone. Then we should also have between compartments access and everything. Some companies are writing down in their SMSs, and it is being approved by class. Entry to enclosed spaces only allowed with SCABA, which is briefing apparatus, self-contained briefing apparatus. Good luck with that, guys. If you are asking us to work in SCABA for 18 tanks, 8 hours a day, then I'm afraid, guys, your procedures are rubbish. It's not going to work. Enclosed space entry should be only to the atmosphere free, and it should not require anybody to wear SCABA. Do we have rescue safety harness on board of our ships? That one which would actually work everywhere in enclosed space? Or do we have stretchers which work very well on open deck but would not allow anybody to go through the manholes? Maneuver people on the very, very tight ladders. That's me. Thank you. I understand we'll have questions later. Yep. I'll head over now to Andrew.
My name is Andrew Teasdale, and I'm contributing to this live stream on the basis that I am a P&I surveyor. And I have hull machinery, and I've also worked for classification. I've undertaken countless condition surveys and must have entered many hundreds of tanks in my time, or indeed thousands of tanks in my inspection career. I've also attended most types of casualties, and I've worked in-house for insurance companies providing technical support to claims teams. And I've worked on projects where claims experience is used to sponsor a risk improvement programme. So when I first considered the InterManager report and its comments regarding post-casualty investigations, my first thoughts were to recall the plethora, the desk loads of loss prevention material that P&I clubs produce regarding this subject, and I also recall the numerous casualty reports I've considered from the likes of the MAIB and others. And turning finally to the document that may be considered to be the defining work, the IMO revised regulations for entry enclosed spaces aboard ships, I did find a comment regarding investigations. So can we move the slide along?
Clicker is in front of you.
This is it. I've read it, I put it in two colours there, but this is paragraph 2 of the preamble, in which investigations are mentioned. And it's very much as Kuba said, investigations into the circumstances that have occurred show, in most cases, insufficient knowledge. Okay? The guys got up in the morning and they decide they're going to kill themselves. or disregard of the precautions rather than a lack of guidance. And I've put lack of guidance in blue because I want to talk about this first. I completely agree with it. There's no shortage of instructions and procedures. The industry response to these tragic accidents has been robust in that regard. Examples include local publications from my own backyard, owner's SMS, enclosed space entry checklist, pre-sea training, enclosed space entry drills, flag state recommendations, and the AIB. And then I draw your attention to the second bit of wording I coloured in pink. Investigations into the circumstances of casualties that have occurred have shown that in most cases they're caused by insufficient knowledge of or disregard for the need to take precautions. It's not actually surprising to read something like this. There's such a lot of procedures and reports and other materials are regularly being produced. Everybody's saying that these accidents would not happen if people were better educated. Only the risks they were running is when the only risks better educated and knew the risks they were running when they were entering a tank space, a cargo hold or a void space. In fact, it cannot help but be seen that every accident, and particularly those involving life as we see it, tend to generate a further call for better training, better equipment, more frequency in whatever drills are being carried out. Yet, whatever is produced and whatever training is promulgated, we will still see deaths each year. Not only are there many deaths, but many of the incidents concern one man going down and then followed by another and another. In fact, I've read, although as Q points out there's no statistics, but I've read that 50% of all deaths in enclosed space entry is because another guy goes in after the first. So that's what we've had so far. The mood in the industry is that when somebody dies in enclosed space entry, it's some kind of aberration. There's so many rules and regulations, there's so much training and there's so much equipment. How do they manage to do it? Moreover, everybody who's listening to this live stream can place themselves in a situation where they are the individual at the top of the tank entry, and the person who just went before has collapsed. What do you do? And what would you do? It's all a very, very emotive subject area. Then out of the blue comes the InterManager survey. InterManager suddenly decides to not ask class, state, or flag, or P&I clips to write another survey. What they say is they go right to the guys with a cold face and they say, what do you think? And in regards to these surveys conducted by InterManager, this is what is recorded. Just for those who are sort of a little bit, I haven't read the InterManager survey. The culture revealed a widespread belief that a blame culture is deeply rooted in the shipping industry. Respondents felt that the majority of accident investigations stop at finding the guilty party and rarely go further to discover why the accident occurred or what were the reasons why for the people who were killed or injured. And the survey revealed a feeling of accident investigations results were inconsistent. I mean, I could go on, but Cooper's already said this. But rather than treating these cases as some sort of aberration, those taking part in the survey indicated that investigations rarely go further to discover why the accident occurred. They don't bring out the reasons for the actions of those who were killed in the incident. The results are always inconsistent. One survey is different to another. And the accident of an investigation format prevents a thorough investigation of accidents. So that's what InterManager has said. It's very, very interesting. What we're dealing with here, and from the human element perspective, is a cultural issue. What is going on in the industry is not suited to what. It's not giving the correct solutions, and there's so many reasons for this. Anyway, so let's get on to some case studies. Since we're dealing with survey and accident investigation, I took this from the Shipowners P&I site. And the first one up, for those who are talking about these sort of accidents, is a chief engineer. The vessel's fuel was found to contain water, and somebody came along a little while later and just found his leg sticking out of the tank. He was dead. I'll try and speak up a bit. And the next one is the mate was asked to he asked one of the crew to go and get some brooms. The guy went down to get the brooms from the trunkway. He collapsed. The mate then followed him in, and there were several people trying to get into the trunkway to rescue the mate and the sailor, but they were stopped by somebody who had a little bit more training perhaps. But 2 people killed. And what do people do about this sort of accident? Well, they go on board, and the P&I Club, and the MAIB, and Uncle Tom Copley and all, they all go out and they report what happened. They interview those involved. They record any salient facts, contemporary salient evidence, measurements and photographs. They do this with great sympathy because they're on board a ship where everybody is absolutely shocked. They report on the circumstances or factors that may have had a material impact on the outcome. And then they make recommendations, promulgate learnings, industry practice, and maybe after that there will be another report exactly the same as before. So what we've got is we've got current industry practice of procedures, SMS, and the SMS is great. It's led to a reduction of deaths, a lot of safe working practices, but it's not probably good enough at this stage. We've got what InterManager say, and we've got people still going on board to report on these sort of tragic incidents. I mean, I heard of one yesterday where a guy went up on a crane in heavy weather to fix an earth fault and landed on his head. 15 metres he fell. And we don't know yet whether he had a permit to work at heights. He just did it. So what I propose here, and I'm not really sort of sure how we're going to deal with this, but I'm really, really pleased we've got some sort of momentum to make a change and to sort of, to reduce the biggest killer on merchant ships to zero. What about standard instructions to surveyors? Because by giving standard instructions from the experience of P&I clubs, we can't just send somebody to do a condition survey of the ship. They don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge. We need to have a group, standard instructions for surveyors, that go beyond examining the procedural issues and introduce human element learnings. Many surveyors won't have this human element learning. I think perhaps the Swedish club are the foremost in human elements, and they, and perhaps all the other clubs through the international group technical committee could actually look at it in this way. And as Kuba suggests, we do need an industry database. As scientists and engineers, we need data. And if we could populate that database, then it's not a case of just having deaths, it's a case of where was he, what was the atmosphere, what was in the atmosphere. It's not, it's not just a lack of oxygen which kills people. As with that poor chief engineer, it might have been something to do with the hydrocarbons. But we just need more information, and this is something that can be fixed. And with that, I think I've come to the end of my lecture. I've given some references there for people who want to know where I sort of referred to. And next up is Maria.
Hello, my name is Maria Kura, and I'm a naval architect and marine engineer. On my early days, as soon as I got out of university, I had to do some assisting in surveys requested by flag administration. So when I was first asked to go down in a ballast tank, I couldn't see anything. It was black. So, of course, I was fearless back then and ignorant, so I got in. I remember also in another case that we were expecting a 4-peak tank, that it wasn't drained completely. So I slipped, I found myself hanging somewhere, I don't remember where. My flashlight moved so hard that I bumped on the bulkhead and tremendous sound was heard. My colleague was scared. So many incidents can happen while we inspect enclosed spaces. So now I'm working for the Institute of Marine Engineering, Science and Technology, and I have been tasked to provide the technical perspective and discuss the technical issues of entering in enclosed spaces. I will go through my presentation on answering why we enter enclosed spaces in the first place. We will talk about the hierarchy of controls, eliminating the hazards, substituting the substitution, engineering controls, and I will have a collection in the end of some questions for the future. So, why we enter enclosed spaces in the first place? Basically, is because we are asked to repair the enclosed space and pipelines or equipment that is related to the function of an enclosed space or an unrelated equipment found in there. We are also getting in an enclosed space for cleaning purposes, to clean for cargo, to clean for inspection, or to clean for repair. Lastly, we also end for inspecting the space for the cargo because the classification has asked us to do, or because we have to do maintenance. So with that in mind, is there any way to eliminate that? Like keep people out of the enclosed space? Is there any way to get into the space, but in a safer way to inspect, clean and repair? Have we taken into consideration the design? Is there any fixed ventilation? Can we design the space with fixed ventilation when natural ventilation is not available? But in any case, when we actually have to get inside, we have to get permit to work, we have to have procedures of safe entry in place, and of course, in no case to get with the breathing apparatus unless it's absolutely necessary. So, why seafarers enter in enclosed spaces? Why we have enclosed spaces in the first place? If we were able to design vessels with the minimum possible enclosed spaces, wouldn't that be safer? In the question about repairing tanks and pipelines, can we do that from dry dock to dry dock? Can we design enclosed spaces that can be repaired from dry dock to dry dock, or apply coatings that they don't need to do anything in between two dry docks? When we are asked to repair equipment in an enclosed space, is it planned? If it's planned, surely it can be done on dry dock. We don't need to serviceable items in an enclosed space. And in the case that an unplanned repair has come up, okay, let's invest in reliable equipment. Let's get in, but have the proper equipment and the proper working equipment. Don't put anything in the space that doesn't have to be there, as this will limit your access back out. Use equipment that can be repaired from the outside space and treat it as a major event. If we have to inspect a non-cargo space, question yourselves, is it necessary to be done between two dry docks? Design the vessel, design access and apply coatings for longer time. Don't skimp in dry dock. Do the works as they're supposed to be done. And in every single step, challenge class and plan maintenance requirements. Do you have to clean for cargo? Okay. Is it necessary? Challenge the cleaning requirements. There may be cases that the cleaning is not even necessary, but we still because cargo surveyors have their requirements, cargo owners have their own requirements, the terminal have their procedures. Again, it's the same. Cleaning for cargo inspection. Is it necessary? So, okay, we talked about eliminating the problem as far as possible, but can we also try and do it safer or substitute the work? Like in cargo tank cleaning, can we use fixed machines and fixed ventilation? In the case of segregated ballast tanks and double hulls in crude tankers, we don't need to do anything between two dry docks. They run between two dry docks without any problems. And if there is a need for inspection, do it remotely. Bring on the drones and robots. So let's think about the engineering of the problem. Completely the technical aspect of it. Is the access secure for the people, including their emergency escape breathing apparatus and all the equipment that they need to carry? Is it the access safe for rescue? Is there fixed ventilation available? And is the space isolated, like in the case of the tank, between the tanks, or the pipeline system? Is it completely isolated so it's safe for me to get in there? So with all this in mind, this is a summary of my thoughts. Why should the space be enclosed in the first place? Let's think about designing ships that have the minimum possible enclosed spaces. Can the charter also help, like reviewing the cleaning requirements, the inspection requirements? Again, this is a question. Is it necessary to have them? Can we design completely out the need for entry, like in the case of the segregated ballast tanks and the double hull tankers? Can we design the tanks and apply coatings from dry dock to dry dock? Can we have fixed tank cleaning and fixed ventilation equipment available? And is it absolutely necessary to enter the tanks? Then in that case, design the tank for access and provide fixed ventilation. In every single case, apply emergency procedures, and as we saw the picture before, place a warning. Danger. This is serious. Thank you.
My name is Martin Shaw. I chair the IMarEST Human Element Working Group. My background, I started off at sea many more years ago than I care to remember. I've worked in the ship owner's office in a variety of jobs, superintendents, fleet managers, vetting managers, and in a variety of different commercial jobs. Also, I'd just like to say a quick thank you to Shansel Huda, who is a member of our working group, who's helping with producing some of these slides. Let's talk again about the hierarchy of controls. Probably worth just repeating a bit of what Maria has just said. This is a standard industry view of how you should deal with safety hazards, and it's been around for more years than I care to remember. And as Maria has quite rightly said, eliminating the need for people to enter spaces is an absolutely ideal way of dealing with things. Substituting safer ways to do it if you have to do it. Improving engineering controls and the likes of that are also important. Our bias in this industry is to use process. We tend to stick with process, leave it entirely in the hands of the people aboard the ship for them to deal with it. The inverted pyramid approach to this is to highlight how effective each of these ways are of avoiding accidents. And you can see at the very bottom, it's generally accepted that the least effective way to prevent an accident is by using PPE, because it's got so many flaws with it. People have got to put it on, they've got to use it correctly, and all the rest of that. As I said, our bias in the industry is to use process, generally permit to work, and procedures. And that being the case, we've mentioned it several times. Nobody gets up in the morning and decides not to use procedures. Nobody gets up in the morning and decides that they want to kill themselves. We quite often hear the lament from people ashore, why don't they do what they're being told to do? And as I said, there are many reasons why that's the case, and one of the reasons raised in the survey is time pressure. Why time pressure? A ship's an expensive asset in a cyclic business. People want to get the most out of it. Profitability depends on maximising earnings and utilising ships as much as you can, and by doing that you create time pressure. And there are many historic instances of time pressure. Anyone who saw that famous documentary starring Kate Winslet on the Titanic will remember the issue of time pressure on the Titanic's maiden voyage. We all remember the Herald of Free Enterprise, which sailed from port with the bow doors open, resulting in the ship flooding and capsizing. The Torrey Canyon, a famous tanker incident going back to the 1960s, was all about cutting corners and getting to the port in time. So time pressure is a real thing, and it has been about our industry for a long time. This is a picture that comes from a book by a guy called James Reason. It's supposed to make the point that in any shipping company there's a balance between performance, making money, and protection, which is dealing with safety. And that there is a bounded area where you have to operate that is safe and profitable. If you go outside that bounded area, you'll either go bankrupt or you can create catastrophe. Finding that balance is very difficult, and you have to recognise that the seas don't get any safer by putting good shipping companies out of business. But at the other end of it, clearly, if we see this as being the second highest killer of seafarers, then there's something that we're not doing right. So we need to think a bit more about time pressure. This is an idea of the different types of time pressure, and you can see I've sort of split it into two types. One is explicit, and the other one is implicit. Explicit time pressure is where somebody's actually told you get this job done and get it done in a sort of specific time scale. Implicit time pressure is where something in your company's organisation or management system is encouraging you to do something quickly. And finally, there's perceived time pressure, which is where an individual is motivated to complete a task quickly, but it's not an explicit or an implicit instruction. What is important to remember is that if somebody in the chain of command feels a time pressure, once he passes that on, it becomes an explicit time pressure to everyone else in the chain of command. So if a superintendent feels some time pressure to get something done, then that time pressure will be passed on as a legitimate instruction almost down the chain of command to all the people that are involved in it, and people will avoid, and people will endeavour to deal with that. Let's talk about some explicit time pressures. Charterers and terminals are are one source of time pressure. Most contracts, most charter parties have the words reasonable or utmost dispatch in them. Generally that is about how much time it takes to navigate a ship from A to B and for it to arrive ready to load its cargo. And that is when the ship arrives in port, it declares notice of readiness and it says it's ready to load cargo. That means that all the work has got to be done in that voyage, whether there is time in the voyage or not, because most people will say, well, it takes me this time to manage from A to B, so I'll fit the other work into that. Late arrival may have commercial consequences. That's an issue that everybody has to take account of. And when you arrive off a terminal, the terminal will be driven by things like berth congestion, tank tops running out of stock, and all the rest of that. So there will always be extra bits of pressure when somebody is saying, get that ship there quicker if you can because we're running out of product for something. Behind all of this is the demurrage laytime game. Anyone who's operated in a shipping company will know that there's a lot of time spent dealing with a thing called demurrage and dealing with laytime. And that is, in many cases, it is about transferring money between the various people within the chain of the operation. In some cases, in charterers organisations, it may be an internal transfer between the people involved in chartering the ship and the terminal. So quite often there's a lot of pressure created by dealing with this mythical commodity called demurrage, and that does create a great deal of pressure. From the point of view of the owner, the commercial manager, the technical manager, there are other things that can create explicit time pressure. So if you're doing some survey work or some inspection work, there will be a limited time period to do it, and you will be aiming to get that work done in the minimum time available. There may be pressure to get the vessel to leave from dry dock, from a main event dry dock, without completing testing, without resetting systems, without cleaning and the likes of that. And I have a recollection of a story I heard of a vessel that left a dry dock in Europe, and as it headed across the North Sea to the UK to pick up its first cargo, there was a problem with lube oil, and the engineers were heavily involved in lube oil. At about the same time, the captain decided he wanted to do some hosing down on deck, and the lines hadn't been properly reset. The captain set up the emergency fire pump up forward and started hosing down the decks, and 5 minutes later a rating arrived and the bridge covered from head to foot in sewage. And what had happened was the sewage system hadn't been isolated from the fire system after dry dock, where it had been used to flush it out. And when the fire pump went on, it pressurised the sewage system and put the ship out of service because the accommodation was completely uninhabitable for a period of time. The thing that was distracting the engineers was a drain that hadn't been put in an oil cooler, and the oil was discharging itself into the bilges instead of circulating around the ship. So all of that was about the pressure to get away from dry dock and the likes of that. And it could just as easily have been somebody saying, "Oh yeah, just get into that tank and make sure that level warning is working correctly." And then if you're doing a voyage survey, there may be weather pressure while you're doing that. So those are kind of explicit things. Implicitly, many organisations use performance targets and KPIs. They may have targets that relate to utilising the vessel, to the uptime of the vessel and all the rest of that. It may well be that the management system is overloaded. The requirements of the management system may be such that the people on board the ship can't actually complete the work. And that may put people under pressure to do things quickly. And indeed, planned maintenance systems. I'm not totally convinced that everybody looks at the planned maintenance system from the point of view of how much work they actually have to do. They look at what they perceive has to be fixed. But quite often, people can cut and paste a previous ship's planned maintenance system into a new system, and you end up with workload that may not be relevant. So a lot of things to think about if you're aboard ship. There are a number of things that may be making you think you have to work quicker than otherwise. There is perceived pressure. Those involved in shipping, in the ultimate, people may fear losing their job. And this brings us into the whole cultural issue. There's power distance culture, the fact that you're afraid to challenge somebody about it. There may be an organisation culture that says you should be taking shortcuts. There might be a desire for promotion. You might feel good by doing things quickly. There may be a pressure for a handover. You're passing the ship responsibilities that you have over to somebody else, and you want to make sure everything's fine. And there may be peer pressure, and it may well be that you've done it before and you've got away with it. So we shouldn't neglect the fact that people aboard ship are influenced by the culture that surrounds them. If you think about relationships and culture, if I think about the kind of organisation that I previously worked in, it was a relatively simple linear organisation. You had a charterer. The charterer wanted utmost dispatch in his cargo. He wanted rapid loads and discharges. He wanted the minimum amount of berth time. And that pressure was passed to the owner. The owner wanted to maximise his earnings, maximise his demurrage, minimise his downtime. He wanted safe operation. He held the document of compliance for the vessel, and he probably had an integrated strategy. The captain, who may well know the people in the office, may challenge the time pressure. He may say, "You've not given me enough time to do that." He may discuss it with superintendents. He may discuss it with the DPA. But in general, there is a dialogue between the master and the owner manager, and that was a sort of a traditional type way of dealing with things. However, it may be more complex now. The owner may have employed a commercial manager. They may have employed a technical manager. There may be a manning manager in it. If the master wants to challenge somebody, will that master challenge the commercial manager and say, "I haven't got time to do this"? Will the technical manager support him? Does the master work for the managing manager, the manning manager, the technical manager, or the commercial manager? So it's very difficult for a master nowadays to be clear about who he's challenging and what he's able to challenge them about. And in the middle of all of that, commercial pressures may be feeding back to the captain that the technical manager wants it done this way, commercial manager wants it done this way. So there are differences in the way that the relationships operate nowadays, and that creates a culture where the master may not turn around and challenge those ashore. The master has every right to challenge. That's written into ISM. The technical manager, or the holder of the document of compliance, has a responsibility to support that. But there are so many people involved in that loop that it could be difficult for them to exert any pressure. It's also worth thinking about people aboard ship and how they think and how they deal with things. This thing called fast thinking. It comes from a book called Fast and Slow Thinking, which is thanks very much to Shamsul for his thoughts on this. And fast thinking is described as automatic, frequent, emotional sort of stereotype. In other words, you don't think too long and too fast about things. There is slow thinking, which is all about planning and thinking and all the rest of that. Fast thinking does save time, and sometimes it works, but it is prone to errors. And sometimes we're not really aware that we're applying fast thinking. And the best example of that is one that's been mentioned before, which is rescuing a seafarer down a tank. You see a person in trouble down a tank, and without any further thought, you apply the fast thinking, somebody's in trouble, I'm going to dive down the tank and I'm going to help them. It may well be that continually entering tanks aboard chemical tankers has become so routine that people think we can shortcut it, and it may well be that entering into void spaces next to chemical tanks under time pressure, thinking that void spaces are not so dangerous. So one thing for people to be aware of is to think whether they're using this fast thinking model or whether they're using a slow thinking model. The general feeling is if you're making a quick decision, then you're going to deal with fast thinking. Let me end this bit of the presentation with questions for the future. So, an initial question: are enclosed space deaths caused by those aboard ships? The general view from our group is no, they're not. They're caused by a variety of different things, and there are a variety of different people who are able to influence it. Is time pressure explicit, implicit, or perceived? As we discussed earlier, is somebody actually telling you to do something? Is a management system telling you to do something? Or is it something that you have in your own head that comes from the culture of the organisation? Does the master, or can the master, resist undue time pressure? Are there consequences for the captain in doing this? Could he lose his job by resisting time pressure? Do those aboard ship get support from the owner, from the document compliance holder, to resist time pressure? And does the document of compliance holder have the power to resist pressure? Does the charterer have a part to play beyond assurance? This is a very important point. In various sectors of our industry, the charterer takes a leading part in the safety model that we operate to, and provides procedures, provides inspection, and provides a whole variety of different things that encourage safe operation. However, the charterers have a commercial organisation behind them. Do the commercial organisation equally contribute to safety, as well as the assurance and operational organisations? And also, how do you limit or how do you recognise the dangers of fast thinking? Just finishing off, and just to recap on what we've been talking about, going back to Kuba's presentation at the beginning, most important thing is we've asked the seafarers, and we've got some answers, and I think there's something incumbent on us to actually try and help them find the answers that we need to these things. The hierarchy of controls gives us a potential way of dealing with that. We can keep people out of enclosed spaces. We can find safer ways to do the things that we have to do in enclosed spaces. We can improve the engineering controls, and we can improve administrative controls and PPE. And that finishes the presentation, and we're ready to take some questions.
Are there too many procedures which conflict each other, or is the problem that the procedures are outdated? If safety equipment exists, why is it not on board?
So there's two questions there. There's one about safety equipment and there's one about procedures. And Andy, do you want to talk about procedures to start with, and then we'll move into safety equipment?
Procedures? Are there too many procedures? It's just a question of the shipping company itself. A lot of people take an SMS, put it in the office and on the ships, and that's it. They just run it. They don't actually think what's behind it. So are there too many procedures? It's more like, are people properly trained in how the procedures work and the ethic of the SMS? So are there too many procedures? No, I think probably there's just enough, because the structure of the SMS should be to sort of build itself. You know, it should grow by constant iteration into the perfect system for the company involved. But it has to be managed like that. So no, I don't think. No, okay, that's my answer.
Kuba, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely, far too many procedures, and a lot of companies are now looking into it and reading it themselves. One of our members actually undertaken a series review, and they have cut 90% out of the SMS because it was unreadable, and because of the years it was gathering fat. Every accident there was something new. They forgotten that they issued a circular 10 years ago on the same accident, which was contradicting the new one, and nobody has taken it out. There was no review. We do have it in ISO and ISM system, continuous review, continuous improvement and everything. But how many companies, shipping companies, actually do that? How many companies do copy-paste? How many companies are employing somebody outside to write SMS for them? That's not in the spirit of SMS. That's not a spirit. How many companies are actually using seafarers, those who are using the procedures, or how many of companies are using seafarers to write the procedures for them, or at least to be consulted on those procedures? So very often we've got somebody who has never ever worked in this particular shipping company, now employed as a DPA or HSEQ manager. He comes with his ballast, with his knowledge from his previous company, and is introducing it, completely disregarding the culture of this particular company. And I'm not talking about the national cultures, I'm talking about the corporate culture of this company. And whenever we challenge it, he says, oh well, but it worked for us when I worked in a company. Well, it may not work here. So there is an issue with that. I strongly believe there is an issue, and I strongly believe there is a huge disconnect between people who are managing seafarers with people in the office. InterManager members are trying to do their best to stop that, to actually introduce different stop procedures which would allow seafarers to actually be in contact with office, which means secondments, for example, for senior officers, or superintendents traveling with the ship, superintendents being with the troops they are managing, seafarers conferences where families are also involved and invited. So to bridge the gap when there is no gap, and Martin, you mentioned already the power distance, for example. When there is a power distance, it is limiting people to actually say something. Good companies realize that. InterManager companies are trying to bridge that, break through all of this, and invite seafarers to be responsible for everything. So yes, I am afraid at the moment there is far too many, and every accident results in new regulation or it requires new circular letter without actually thinking, what have we done last time? Why our procedure was not working? Because every accident is the failed procedure. It's not that human beings follow this procedure. If the procedure was not good enough for the humans to follow it, or they allowed humans not to follow it, there must be a change in the procedure as well. But not just following the proverbial.
Okay, so I think there's two questions in that. One, I think Andy's answer is about the enclosed space procedures, but I think yours is a more general one, which I agree with. In my view, there are way too many procedures. There's too much paperwork for people on board ship to deal with. And what we've done is by thinning down the staff aboard ship and taking away some traditional roles. We used to have things like catering officers and radio officers who did administrative tasks. We've made the most experienced people aboard the ship administrators, captain and the chief engineer. Why we can't have a digital assistant on board the ship, I've got absolutely no idea. We can have one at home, but we don't seem to be able to have one on board. So those procedures and all of that admin is not a victimless crime, because you take the captain and the chief engineer, who are the most experienced people, away from what could be their role in coaching people and helping people. What one captain used to describe as making life difficult for the chief officer. He saw that as being part of his role in life, going out there and looking around and doing things. Too many procedures. Why too many procedures? Kuba's mentioned the issue that every time there's an accident, there's a new procedure. And the question about procedures that I don't believe that has been fully answered is, are procedures there to prevent accidents happening, or are they there to manage liability? Are procedures there so that if something happens and it all goes to court, you can say, here are the procedures that were supposed to be followed, and somebody aboard ship didn't follow them. And in fact, in insurance and all the rest of that sort of stuff, it is insurable if the person aboard ship actually makes a mistake, where it's not insurable if the company itself is making the error. So I think way too much procedures. There's a great propensity to add procedures, but not to actually take any away. And I think that's important. I suspect I know the organisation that you were talking about. I saw a presentation from a management company that said that they had taken their bridge procedures from, what was it now? I think it was 60 or 70,000 words down to 19,000 words, and introduced a whole bunch of very effective checklists and things like that they used in conjunction with an organisation from the aviation industry. Going back to Andrew's point, I think there are things like the International Safety Guide for Oil Tankers and Terminals, which is being rewritten at the moment. It has a detailed section on enclosed space entry. One would hope that tanker operators, when they've got that, will rewrite their own procedures, because ISGOD is used in tanker safety courses and people are taught to that. One would hope that people will go out there and rewrite their own procedures, but conflicts are absolutely possible. Maria, is there anything that you want to add to this as part of the putting your other hat on?
Well, the only thing I have to add is that I remember when we were doing operation, that in the ISM there was one of responsibilities to was to regularly to inspect all rooms on the vessel, all spaces in the vessel twice a year, every 6 months, and it didn't make any sense but it was in the ISM, and we had to comply, and we had to create a record of doing so to be in compliance with the ISM. Why it was there, who decided to put it there, and if it was actually needed or not, it's another question.
What was the second part of that question again? Was it to do with safety equipment?
If safety equipment exists, why is it not on board? I think that goes to Kuba when he said that at the very end that he listed equipment that needs to be taken with when we're entering an enclosed space.
Kuba, do you want to pick up on
Well,
that?
I can obviously, because there are companies which would spend a lot of money on providing seafarers with everything is there available, and InterManager obviously and InterTanko and other international associations would be promoting that kind of approach. But then we have companies which would go with absolute minimum. And whenever I go on board of a ship, I do check, and my question would be, how many oxygen meters do you have? One. And it's only very recently when IMO actually implemented, and it's compulsory to have one, full stop. And Andrew, when you go on board of the ships, do you ask questions like that? Do you see 25 oxygen meters on board, for example, because one can go wrong? And as a P&I club, would you say, guys, you can't have one? And how do you then test it?
The big problem with oxygen use is calibration, of course.
Calibration as well.
Often out of date.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the safety equipment goes, I mean, Martin, you're a ship management background, but your ship management company was one of the better ones for that sort of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, I remember visiting a ship on one occasion, and there was some tank work going on, and I foolishly said, oh, well, I'll come down there with you. And they said, oh, well, you've got to put on this emergency escape set now. So I put the emergency escape set on, and then I thought, hang on, this is just stupid. The first thing about this piece of equipment. And I asked the chief officer to explain it to me. And in my younger days, when I was a cadet, I used to go scuba diving. And while I didn't understand the equipment, I could definitely see that the gauge said empty on the bottle. And I went through this whole process, and I said, how do you check whether the bottle's empty or not? Well, you check the gauge, and the chief officer looked at the gauge and said, this is empty, isn't it? I said, yeah. I said, was it intentional or otherwise? But yeah, so maintaining the equipment, and quite often, I think even in the early days of emergency escape sets, there were issues to do with compatibility with compressors on board and all sorts of other stuff like that. But you can have the equipment, but whether you use it or not, or whether you've got it locked up in a cupboard somewhere and issued sort of on request by the chief officer or something like that, that's another issue as well.
Yeah. I think it comes down to the actual shipboard safety committee, the ethos that is transmitted from the shore, from the ship managers to the ship across the ship-shore divide. It should encourage the safety committee and take issue if there's anything just being cut and paste, and instill in the shipboard safety committee a need to be better, constantly improve.
There's a thing in my head about permits to work. We talked about permits to work earlier. Permits to work, closed space permits to work, again, has been around as long as I've been seen. Back in the 1970s, closed space permits were introduced. And one of the issues with an enclosed space permit is who signs it. What level does it go to? Now, if you've got lots and lots of enclosed space entry going on, then it's going to be signed on board. But if you imagine a sort of a future world that we would be happy with, where there's the absolute minimum amount of tank entries because you designed the ship so that it'll run from dry dock to dry dock without any repairs being required, where the charterer has said, well, actually, I'm not bothered about that warm wash procedure, and actually accept that I may well have put that procedure in place for older ships that didn't have smooth tanks with good coatings and all the rest of that sort of stuff. And we've absolutely reduced to a minimum the number of times an enclosed space has to be entered. If you actually turn that round and move the responsibility for actually signing off on that as high up the chain of command as you can into the organisation ashore, then that puts you in a great position to push back and say, yeah, but we don't have enough time to do this. And somebody senior ashore has then got to get involved in making the decisions about how much time you've got. But the problem is, if there are lots of entries going on and there are lots of permits to work being issued, they become more routine and people don't take them as seriously as the system would otherwise. Worked in dry docks, and they have tank systems for people going in and out of tanks. They have chemists who deal with ensuring that the tanks are properly cleaned. That's the place to enter tanks. It's not on board ship when you're fitting it in between other things. Maria, do you have another question for us?
I have many questions, and we will be running out of time soon. Anyway,
Yeah,
I will try and combine them.
I'd like to get a train at 4 o'clock this afternoon. That's 2.5 hours from us, so I'm fine.
For the safety of time, I will combine questions together. So we have a question coming from Andy Doherty, who says, given everyone is saying the same thing and the current situation is unacceptable, how come industry seems to be so unable to lobby for serious changes to regulations? And also, if there is anything that the IMO can do, and if there is an industry guidance, a single consolidated, consistent industry guide that can be endorsed by supported by association for the problem.
So first of all, Andy, thanks very much for your question. Andy, if I'm not embarrassing him, is involved in rewriting ISGOT at the moment. And I think this is in the middle of looking at the enclosed space chapter as well. So this is all very meaningful stuff to him. I think the question is principally about IMO. Is that correct, Maria?
It's why we are not changing the regulations, if IMO can do something, and if it's an industry guidance that can be supported by associations.
So I think, I guess I would say that Cuba's organisation, IMarEST, and indeed OCIMF, that Andy is a member of, is a member of an organisation called the Human Element Industry Group. The Human Element Industry Group is a group of NGOs who are interested in marine safety. So it includes ourselves, it includes the International Chamber of Shipping, the International Transport Workers Federation, Intertanko, OCIMF, marine pilots, master mariners. Who am I missing? Cuba. Certainly a few more. So I think, your challenge to us, Andy, is can we do something about it? And I would hope we can. I hope one of the things that we'll get out of this is the opportunity to take some of these things to IMO. For example, time pressure. That is something which doesn't just affect enclosed spaces. It affects navigation. It affects collisions and all the rest of that sort of stuff. So if there's stuff that we can take to it, we can certainly try and do it. But Cuba.
I think IMO is actually trying to do that. I was reading our own report this weekend when IMO is complaining that GSIS is not being used. Where is the database of all accidents? And when we are talking to the P&I clubs, international group only recently admitted that they do not talk to each other. So the problem is we probably haven't got a definition of enclosed space death. And because we haven't got this as a definition, then P&I clubs are reporting different things. When then we go to specific P&I club or Holland Machinery Club and ask a question, they say, actually it was an enclosed space entry. It was this and this accident, or this was this, or it was below deductible, therefore we are not counting it on. So this is where the problem is statistically. I couldn't now go to any of the P&I clubs. By the way, we have gone because there was some sort of accusation that InterManager went only to the seafarers. InterManager with this survey went to P&I clubs. Only 2 of P&I clubs were interested in participating, and spread the word about our survey. The other clubs were not really interested. Same applies to class. Class knew about it, classes knew about it. Not really interested in that. Now, once we've got the result, there is a lot of, oh, you didn't ask us to participate or something. Yes, we did. We did. And we always inclusive. We always try to get out to as many people as possible. Maybe because we are cynical as well, we want to avoid a situation and somebody will say, you didn't ask us. So specifically, we went to all, asking questions and saying, what do you think about it? How would you get involved? How would you like to get involved? And the problem here is also that I think we are very fragmented. Fragmented at the industry level, but also at the individual level. Chief executive of a particular organization may be aware of this initiative, but is so busy that he does not pass down to the person who would actually be responsible for dealing with database, for dealing with accident investigation, for doing all sorts of things. So there is a great role for us in Hague when we are actually individuals representing different companies, talking to each other, having a brew together, talking and trying to achieve something. Martin, you've just been to IMO this Tuesday on this element. So there is a lot of being done. Obviously, as usual with IMO, it takes time. But I think Andrew said that already. We've got a momentum going now, and superb. And we've got this event today as well. Then we are hopefully talking not only to ourselves. We've got people with 20 questions I can see here. So people are interested. I see Bimko, I see Peter actually asking questions as well. So hello, Peter. Thank you for being with us. So that's very important because there are people, organizations which are not around this table, but they are extremely important, and it's good, and we are reaching out there. So I think this is my answer. How we can and we should. IMO, we know how IMO works. Okay, Martin is very good with that as well. Thanks, Martin, for that. Being patient and knowing how to, because we need to cover all angles, and IMO is one of the angles as well. Long way to go, I agree, but having one database which already exists, it's there. But having flag states who are supposed to report to GSIS every accident which happens would be superb. But if you go to GSIS now and try to search for enclosed space entry accident, sorry. It's as lifeboat accidents, non-existent. And that's the problem. So we need to do training, and I think this is what we are doing now. Education to all people who are involved in that. Representing Isle of Man flag, Marshall Islands, Liberia, MCA. Guys, we're talking to you as well. Hello?
If I may, I think that what Cooper said about training actually answers probably some of the questions we have, if I'm allowed to share. Why have the seafarers not recognized themselves as part of the problem, and what needs to be done to change the mindset of the seafarer as we give them responsibility also of the situation?
I'm very happy to answer that because, first of all, I disagree with that. Honestly, and I would like to take the air industry. Why air industry is not thinking the same way as we are thinking about that? Why air industry is proud of their people? Do you remember when we had 737 recently, 800? When the first one went down, there was discussion that pilots were probably not knowledgeable enough. When the second one happened, the whole industry said, enough, stop it. Our guys are not stupid. They are not killing themselves. We need to help them. And all planes were not flying. Full stop. Until Boeing themselves came forward and said, actually, yes, you're right. We had an IT issue. We have forgotten to tell you, or actually we asked you to pay for it in order to know that. And nobody blamed pilots. Full stop, nobody. Okay, you may say if the pilots were knowledgeable, there was allegedly few other accidents which did not happen because the pilots averted this accident. So they were more skillful, you may say, than the others, who unfortunately are not with us anymore. But the whole industry were not focusing on pilots. They were focusing, how can we help pilots? These are the last resort for us as safety is concerned. This is what I would love to see, us sitting here and saying, guys, our best people are dying. How can we help them? What shall we do to actually make sure that, in your case, in the trunk, that these guys were dying in the trunk? Why the trunk didn't have an alarm? Why the trunk didn't have a bolted entrance which says, do not enter, this is death area?
Here be dragons.
and so on and so forth. Yes, things like that. What we are saying is, oh, stupid, they went one after the other, and so on and so forth. As a seafarer, if I hear that, then somebody calls me stupid, then somebody calls me complacent or something like that. Do I have a backup? Do I have somebody I can turn around? And I could go to Martin as my manager and say, Martin, listen, I got a problem. Could you help? And if I hear, Kuba, you are the only one who's got a problem, you know, then will I come back? Probably not.
So, to me, there's the analogy. I bore people to death with this analogy, but the analogy I like is the seafarer is a goalkeeper, and if you were the manager of a team and the team lost 5-0, then would you sack the goalkeeper? No. It sounds like a lot of ship owners nowadays would sack the goalkeeper. But somebody else might ask the question, well, how many goals did he save? Which is quite important. And if he actually saved 50 and let 5 in, then actually he's doing a pretty good job. So then you have to ask yourself, well, it was 5-0, so the forwards weren't doing very much. They didn't get the ball in the net at the other end of the other end of the pitch. And if 55 balls headed towards the home team's net, then where were the defenders? So the question really, from my point of view, is if the seafarer is the goalkeeper, what are the other 10 people on the pitch doing? So what about the class societies? What about the shipbuilders, ship repairers? What about ship owners? You know, is everybody doing enough to support the goalkeeper? And I'm sure many organisations can quite honestly say, yes, they are. But in many cases, it all comes back to the goalkeeper and the fact that they let the ball in the net. After all the other things that have gone wrong in the entire chain of the organisation, and a ship that was designed 10 or 15 years ago, and a bunch of procedures that have been created over a long period of time, you're expecting the seafarer to knit it all together and make it actually work. I was going to say something else. There was another point which is about the Hague, and that is the Human Element Industry Group does work with IMO, and we are working with IMO on a number of things. But one of the things that all of the group members agreed on is that's not the only thing that we've got in our toolbox, that we can work together as members on things, as we are here today, for example. And for example, OCIMF and Intertank will work together on many different things. So there is a possibility, because it takes a long time to get things through IMO, that we might be disappointed how long it takes. We could do things within the industry much quicker ourselves. So my challenge back to everybody about the questions that we've raised in these presentations is, well, why don't we just get on and do something about them? There's nothing to stop us. We can influence IMO, but we can also do things ourselves because we've got quite a large footprint. Andrew,
I have a question for Andrew.
Oh, you do? Good.
Yes,
good.
I have. If our investigation are so good, why do we see same accidents again and again? What is the question actually addressed to you directly?
Okay, well, I don't think our investigations are good. And it follows that if we have investigations all saying different things and not investigating properly, then we have more accidents. So it's as simple as that. Okay, is that fast enough?
Yeah,
Superb.
that's a good answer.
I can't even argue with you.
Well, there's a notable occasion.
Indeed. Agree.
I will take the question from Peter now. Lack of knowledge by crew of the limitations of blowers and air ventilators and the impact on the sea's atmosphere could be another issue?
I would say so, and this is, Peter, thank you for that. Because imagine, we are jacks of all trades when it comes to work on board of the ship. One day we are firefighters, the other day we are paramedics, and then today we are enclosed space entry experts. So if we are given a tank entry place, designed by designers, approved by the class, mentioned in procedures, and it says use the blowers, use this and that, how many of our guys actually think, hold on a second, where does it go to? How far the blower goes? It goes to the first platform. Then there is a dog leg. Does it really blow any further? You would say proper training. Yes, so proper training should say to the seafarer, that's it, I'm not entering, I'm sorry. It's not designed. The blowers we are providing, and more importantly, points where we are checking atmosphere are not reaching far enough. And how can you actually see whether the ventilation is working or not? So there is some sort of a false sense of security. Oh yes, I'm using procedures. Oh yes, I ticked all boxes. Oh yes, I've got a blower now. Oh yes, I've got an oxygen meter on me. I am going to survive. Are you? And I don't know why all of a sudden people are looking at us, at seafarers, then we should be knowing all of this. How many times actually seafarers been into old tanks? You learn that because you go there. I've done a lot of tanks, okay? But would I say that I've been in every single tank? On my ship, when I spent 5 years, that's very important because that's what seafarers were saying as well. I was lucky enough to serve on one ship 5 years. I was second officer, chief officer, and mate. After 5 years, I can probably put the right hand on my heart and say, yeah, I've been on every British, Maersk Baffin or Maersk Biscay, same ships in every place. But when we are moving our people around now, and people are not working in the same teams, and companies are not buying sister ships, these guys are not able to be in every tank. They don't know the limitations. The trunk issue you mentioned, I would assume depends, definition of trunk. I'm thinking of trunk, it would probably be quite safe for me. It would not even be regarded as enclosed space. Trunks I think of. Obviously, I'm wrong, because this particular trunk was a danger and it killed people. So that's why our survey, for example, shows that seafarers are saying, why don't we have enclosed spaces painted red and say deaf space? Don't call it enclosed space, call it catastrophic space, deaf space, anything which would actually raise your hair and think, ooh, I'm not entering it, just like that. Chain lockers, how many people were not aware that chain lockers are killing? If you read bulk terminal guys, entering very open bulk carrier holes, everyone ashore thinks, that must be, it's open, it's such a wide open place. Then you go down and there's no oxygen and you kill yourself.
Stephen, I'm conscious we've been answering all the questions online, but we've not even invited you to contribute.
Thank you, Martin. I did ask to come to this. I, in a previous life, made lots of programs on entry into closed spaces, and hence being here to get some understanding of what would have to be done to update them. And I think one of them is, certainly in the programs that we made, CVT and video, relied too much on PPE. People were too interested to use that to go into an enclosed space, even though on one editing session I remember saying, how could you possibly get through this entrance, wearing all this kit and survive to get into the tank, not alone to come out? And I think you've answered that. But I think the technology element is one. One really has to look at this. Of course, ships are built in different parts of the world to different budgets, operated by different people, and if we think this is a challenge, wait until we try and get to automated ships. A great automated ship, but nobody can actually get into the enclosed spaces, which is where some of the problems may be. One of the slides that came up earlier were the number of deaths in ports, and I was at a security conference yesterday with the Royal Navy and Merchant Navy, and the ship-shore interface keeps coming up. And I think there has to be a challenge here, and I don't know what the panel of experts feel about this, but there are an awful lot of deaths in ports because of enclosed spaces, and you touched on it just now, because they go down a hold, or they go into a chain locker, or they've got to do something. From my limited understanding, who has the responsibility and how can that be improved? And should not that element form part of this discussion? Thank you.
I'm happy to start answering it. Obviously, absolutely right. And as a chief officer, I remember having a problem because my surveyors were all over the place. We haven't even berthed. Gangway goes ashore, shore people come on board, they've been on this ship or sister ship and they want to move on. Come on, get on, get on. We still have net to put on the gangway, we still have ropes to, and we've got a lot of things to do. Not to mention, on tankers, we have to do the shore-to-ship checklist first. But surveyors, we need to take samples. They go around, you have to stop them. Good companies, good management companies would say, hold on a second, guys, you are not doing it. Get back to the cargo office, let's do that. But on a smaller, I don't know how to call those companies, where people are a bit less brave to stop shore. You know, there is this thing that shore people are always right nowadays on ships. They come on board, how can you stop them? They know better. And they would argue, actually, they would put a fierce argument. Then, hey, you know, I've got another ship waiting for me. I came here only for 20 minutes to take the samples, I have to go. We are not ready for you yet. Oh, you should be ready for us. Well, if you told us, then you would. And we come back to the pressure and so on and so forth. And a lot of those shore people do not see themselves as a part of a problem. Unfortunately, according to statistics, some of them find themselves killed because they go to the places they shouldn't be going. We moved on, big style on tankers. Nowadays, going to the pump room is not allowed. But you had a lot of surveyors, vetting inspectors, going all the way to the pump room because they, you know, I've been sailing, I know what I'm doing, I'll go there.
We've always done it.
CO2 being used in the wrong places and so on and so on. Which brings me to another thing, I'm sorry, I'm not answering the question. Shipping industry was happy to use CO2 for engine fires for so many years. And come on guys, what is it? You know, how can we do that? And we are surprised when we killed someone. And we would even say, stupid second engineer, he shouldn't be entering it. Well, should we be using CO2 to start with? Why we are creating an environment when we will kill someone without thinking about it?
Andy, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
I think the issue of stevedores, for those listening, if you work in these sort of shore industries, I'm sorry we haven't really touched on it enough because it is just as serious as the seafarers themselves. I think I was in Greece quite recently and I was told of a death where a stevedore went into the cargo hold full of broken glass. And I don't know if there's a bottle of Coca-Cola there or something, but he went for it. And he was dead because the residues oxidising on the glass, the broken glass, had stripped the hold of oxygen. You know, the people on board the ship, they've got the knowledge. They shouldn't let people go into those cargo holds until they're safe. Now, on the other hand, the people in the shore offices, they know the dangers involved and they should brief their guys accordingly. So, you know, perhaps it's part of this revisiting, and I think if we have the statistics and we can work with those statistics, and they're properly presented, then we can start then we can start approaching the individual sort of stakeholders and getting them to work together to eradicate this problem.
There's an interesting sort of interface to the shore, and I think there's there was an end notice about it many years ago, and I think it was in Chirp. I think Chirp reported on it recently. Not recently, it's about 10 years ago. It was a case of a ship which was in the US, and it was taking stores and loading stores, and the chief cook went down into the fridge spaces, and he came out and he was feeling a bit dizzy, didn't quite understand what was wrong. And he came up and he met the electrician, and he said, "Yeah, I'm just feeling really dizzy." I said, "Just in the cold rooms." And the electrician went down and opened the door and stood there and started feeling dizzy himself. And to cut a long story short, the ice cream that had been delivered had been packed in dry ice, and the ice cream was put into the cold room without anyone being aware. It was packed in dry ice. The dry ice then evaporated into the space and effectively created a hazardous space without anybody even knowing that there was an issue. So again, when they were asked about it, the agency said, "Oh, we always do that. That's quite normal."
Martin, very recently we read, I hope everybody read about that, there was a near miss or averted accident by Coast Guard, US Coast Guard, because they require, allegedly, all the inspectors to wear oxygen meters nowadays when they go on board. And they were doing lifeboat drill. And as a result, they went into the lifeboat and they started engine. And it was only because Coast Guard guy had the oxygen meter, when it went into alarm, they realized that actually there was lack of oxygen in a lifeboat because engine of the lifeboat, if I remember rightly, was eating all the oxygen and putting fumes back because there was a problem with exhaust. We don't have a procedure on board of our ships that our own seafarers are wearing. Reading that, I would introduce that immediately. My members may think, Kuba, stop here, because you know, do you remember this slide when you go bankrupt and you go, so stay within the boundaries, Kuba. But
you're aiming towards catastrophic bankruptcy.
yes, definitely, cutting all the corners possible. But that because of Coast Guard, guys, thank you very much for having this. We saved few guys there, and it sticks with me. I, as an experienced seafarer, I would never ever wear oxygen meter going to the lifeboat. Now I'm asking myself a question: why not? Enclosed space as well, lifeboat. It can produce something, as we can see.
Maria?
Yes, we have questions about perception of danger from Daniel Berg. He says that most people are unaware of the speed of oxygen depletion in chain lockers and cargo spaces. But also he's asking, do people enter an enclosed space because most cargoes are everyday commodities that people do not perceive as dangerous? And he also says that do people enter an enclosed space because an oxygen depleted atmosphere looks normal? So I think all these sum up the perception of danger.
I would say that's the case. I think that fits very comfortably into the fast, into the fast thinking sort of mode. And that is people are looking at things, they've got a bit of pressure on themselves to do something, and they're using. They're not using their deep knowledge to analyze it. They're using their shallow knowledge to analyze it. Kuba, you've got
Yes, so I would accept that, although I would always argue that seafarers are not stupid.
Yep.
And if we do our job properly as a ship managers, we will train them, we'll only promote and employ good guys and blah, blah, blah. But let's assume that they had what we would sometimes call in shipping, they brain farted, okay? Unfortunately, they had a lapse of everything. So why in other industries we would use your pyramid and we would make sure that we are not relying on PPE, we are not relying on a goalkeeper. We've got a defense, we've got a meat, we've got a guys. So it has to be like a Swiss cheese. A lot of things have to fail before the final guy fails. Why in shipping we forget about all these layers and we expect you, Martin, to be the clever guy and everything. So if these guys are really not thinking about that, why chain lockers are not designed with automatic ventilation or automatic alarm, or I'm not an engineer, there could be a very good system now where human beings would be reminded. Cars are now designed. I was driving something recently and I was amazed, and the red light came on my mirror telling me actually there is a car. When I tried to put the indicator that I'll be overtaking, my mirror says, don't do that, there is someone there. How clever is that? Thank you. Thank you, Audi, I think it was, Audi it was, or BMW. Use of technology. They are helping me, driver, not to kill myself. Can we have the same in shipping industry? And nobody, BMW is never saying, we have stupid customers, we have to do something for them. So let's stop with this attitude in shipping.
Let's be honest about it.
Drivers they do probably, but they don't keep telling me because I will never buy BMW. But in our industry, everybody tells me you're stupid, you're complacent, you're this, and this. How encouraging it is for me to actually work in our lovely industry.
I will continue with not a question this time, but a statement from Andy. From Robin Stowell. He says that the problem is being discussed in a systematic way, linearly simplistic. What's needed is a systematic understanding of the complexity of percussive organization. And he also mentions the necessity for enclosed spaces is a balance against watertight and gas-tight integrity. There is a limit to what can be designed out. So I think that question comes probably because of my presentation, and I would agree with Robin.
Yes, there is.
I completely agree with him. There is a limit of what can be designed out, but there is many other things that can also be implemented in order to secure, to provide safer access. It's also what we mentioned about fixed ventilation, fixed tank cleaning that doesn't need for anybody to be in the space. Alarms, we mentioned several times the question that like a trunk, why not an alarm there? So this is designing out with a safer access for the crew, I think.
On the other question, the understanding of the complexity of organisations, yeah, I agree. I think one of the big problems that we have is the shipping industry as a whole is becoming increasingly complex in the way that it operates, and there's all sorts of little feedback loops within it, which potentially can lead to disaster. I can't really say any more than yes, there is a need for an understanding to answer the question. Yeah. Sorry.
I have an interesting question. We had early informed that about 50% of fatalities arise from unplanned entry to save others. This is human instinct, but you say nothing on addressing this?
I think there is a lot said about that, and we recognize that, unfortunately. One of our seafarers, amazing, that was from Filipino OS, and I'm sorry I'm bringing nationality here. He was very simplistic in his response to that, but even he recognized that. And when I'm saying even he, OS, ordinary seaman, is the lowest rank on board of the ship, as far as that department is concerned. He suggested that the standby person should be tied up by the rope to his post, so he would not untie himself in an instinct to go and rescue someone. This guy is going to get a laptop from us, to be perfectly honest, for his thinking and recognizing. So if people, at this level are recognizing that already, then I've got all faith and other guys do that as well. But unfortunately, I believe there is a combination of, like Andrew mentioned in his presentation, I bet those guys who died did not recognize the trunk was a problem place. There is probably a false sense of security. If it's lit, if it is with carpet, or if it is with, I don't know, linoleum or something, indicating that this is a living accommodation, we can do that. I'm mentioning that because of a lot of gas plants are designed that way, and a lot of people are not thinking of them as enclosed space, for example, because you walk into the room and the room looks like there was a meeting 5 minutes ago. You're not going to immediately think this is enclosed space, because definition of an enclosed space is not being read and hammered into the heads of everyone. I take the point. Discussions like today, training and training and training and training. But also, I believe we need to remind people, look at cars. Again, I'm using the car industry, for example. Why do we have a reminder that my seatbelt is not fastened? Is it because I'm stupid? No, because I'm a human being. My brain can wander around. And how many times, and I'm a very conscious guy, I start driving and I go bing, 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 bing. Oh, sugar, I didn't close the door. Did I do that because I'm stupid? Of course not. Because there was something in a way. And is the car industry saying, we've got stupid drivers, we have to have alarms? No, they never do that. They say, we will help you drivers, we will install it. So please industry, let's do something about our seafarers. I'm repeating myself again, but I'm giving example, then we can do that. But the attitude needs to be, trust our people, they are very good guys. We pay them, by the way. If they are that stupid, why we are paying them so much money?
Andy, do you want to add something to that?
Just remind me of the question.
it was about the problem being linear and simplistic, and what needed is a systematic understanding of the complexity of percussive organization.
What's that?
That's the one before, isn't
That
it?
was the one before. There was that.
Yeah.
The question you asked was about 50% of.
Oh,
the
yes,
50%.
yes.
Well,
you're
first of all,
right. The human instinct.
First of all, I don't know if it is 50%. I have heard. We just don't have the statistics. But anecdotal evidence or anecdotal what people say is 50%, and I can believe that. I as I've been writing my presentation, I've been imagining myself in the second case of the case study I gave, being that person, seeing somebody is passed out down the trunking, and wondering, would I go down there? As it was, the captain, when he arrived on the scene, the first thing he did was he switched on the hull ventilation. So there's actually something more you can do than panic. It's a very difficult thing to say, but yeah.
Stephen, did you want to add something?
It's human nature to help. And accidents and medics and doctors say, often don't do that. Don't move that victim from a car, even if you feel that you should. And the other thing is, I think that certainly in the aviation business, which I know a little bit about, is that we're not bad. We're bad at, as soon as we get focused into something, we close other things down. Pilots, if there's a challenge, there's that 747 crash in Japan where they were busy trying to fix an engine and flew into the mountain. You tend to narrow things down. So somebody gets ill, you see it, you want to help, and you forget absolutely everything else. So I think it's to a certain extent human nature. Technology and science and red doors and everything else, I concur with. Sorry, just an observation.
How are we doing for time, Maria?
We have 10 more minutes
10
and
more
a couple of questions to go,
Okay.
so if we manage to do all of them.
Excellent, off you go.
Another statement. Individuals, seafarers and ship managers need to feel empowered to stand up and clearly state that they will not conduct an entry if not safe for any reason. But this ties with the question, sometimes crew are forced to enter the enclosed spaces, though enough safety equipment are not on board, because they are feared to lose their job. Who will look into the matter?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I can try to answer that, because in InterManager meetings, for example, we are talking about that. And I loved Martin's presentation when we were talking about the perceived, how human beings are actually reacting to things. And interestingly enough, I think there is a culture issue here. From, for example, ex-communist countries, there is a perception then, and the power distance and everything, is that if it's written in a procedure, it's a Bible, it's a gospel. You cannot actually say no to that. And if your English is not your first language and you read something, and then you combine it because you came from the other companies and you had different, you make a mess out of it, complete mess, and you are misinterpreting things. In your previous company, it was okay to do things. In this company, it's not okay. In this company, it's not okay to rush things, do things, and so on and so forth. If it is not being reinforced, if this is not being mentored in, if there is no leadership on board, or people are disengaged because the office is not really supporting that kind of thing, then we've got a recipe for disaster, and things do happen. Imagine how often in UK would you see someone grabbing you and saying, don't go there. That's not the culture in the UK. You wouldn't do that. That may happen in Germany, may happen in other continental countries. But in UK, physical contact with somebody, no, we don't do that here. Look at the airport, how many people are hugging. No, we don't. Italians would be kissing each other, Greeks would, Poles would. We don't do that here in UK. So follow that, okay? And how many people in UK would actually see that something is going wrong, but that's all right.
So there goes the IMarEST diversity policy.
Yes. And I'm sorry that I'm bringing something so tangible, but I just wanted us A, to laugh, but B, to bring something where you can see that immediately. And do you think that onboard ships is different? No, it's not. How can you have a Filipino OS who would actually grab British master or Norwegian master and say, "Sir, don't do that"? It won't happen.
I mean, it is actually the biggest question. It's the major question, which I just really don't know what the answer is. Well, your survey came out and referred to some of the pressure that we put under as bullying. And that, using those words might make some difference in some flags, but in other, it's just the way that things are done. So how do we as an industry encourage people to respect the seafarer? Well, IMO's got its role in doing that and does its small best, but how do you actually turn the whole thing around and have a ship owner or a ship manager who really is interested in hearing what people aboard ships say? And that's what I hope what we're starting to do by having this presentation. We're saying to the seafarer, we listen to you, and we have a slightly more powerful voice than you, and we're going to put that voice out there and let other people hear it. Yeah. Andy, did you have anything more?
No, I think it's fantastic we've got this survey from InterManager, because it does come from the coalface and it does explain that the people who are being killed on a monthly basis have opinions and they're asking us to solve it for them. So yeah.
Last question?
Yes, well, it's not a question, it's more of an information. Rob Collier said that at recent IMO MSC 101, they agreed to an agenda item to review the resolution on recommendations for enclosed space entry. So this is probably an excellent opportunity to influence.
Yes. Answer is yes.
Thanks, Rob.
Our little group is getting together at the end of the month to plan some other things that we're going to be doing. So let's include that in our list of things for us to discuss.